Anyway, so so I give the floor to Darren Gray. Give him some applause. Yoo-hoo.
Oh shit.
If you don't have, we have an HDMI.
HDMI, please. Yes. Sorry, I thought I had DPI.
Well, apparently no.
No, I was wrong.
Yeah, that happens. Why not? So you've got the and this one goes there. So there's the HDMI. There's a presenter thing.
I've got my own actually.
Oh,
I'll just use that.
where's your? You have to this.
How's this thing fit in my head? Like it? Ow.
Oh, it's a bit uncomfortable. Sorry.
I'll just do it like that. Does that work?
Yeah, with this like yes.
Hello. So what's the Twitch channel? Everyone tweet about it.
So it's I'm just putting it on Twitter myself.
I'll tell Facebook as well. You got the channel name?
So that should be it.
So do we have the Twitch?
Yes, it's EU down score IRDC.
Okay. Should I set up an infinite loop and put it up on the screen? Just checking it works.
It's offline.
Cool.
I think.
I didn't even wait for it. It's offline. Do you want to write it on the board for everyone to... If people want to tweet about it. It is not offline.
It is not offline. Okay.
So... Oh, wait. Is that me? Yes, that's me. With a few seconds delay. Okay, cool. Okay, we're probably ready to go then. Do I use the microphone? Oh no, I've got this thing, haven't I? Is this working?
Yep, it's working.
Okay. Hello everyone. Okay. I'm Darren Gray. I host Roguelike Radio sometimes. And I also develop my own strange little games. I'm currently working on a little game called Jupiter Hell, so just free publicity right now. And the sound isn't working. But that is my problem. Why isn't the sound working? There we go. It's okay. For those that haven't seen this, so it's on Kickstarter now. Please go back. Right, anyway. So I'm going to be talking today about what is a rogue. Now, a lot of people are interested in what is a roguelike. This is a question that gets asked often. What I'm more interested in right now is what is a rogue like. This genre is named after this 5-letter word, and what specifically does this mean? And what does it mean for our games? Words have power and importance, so I'd like to really dive into this word. Now, firstly, importantly, it is not rouge, okay? Everyone always misspells it rouge-likes instead of roguelikes, but this is a very important distinction. In particular, going to the sort of the powder analogy, we don't care about our rouge in roguelike. We don't care how we look. A good rogue doesn't stop to check on their makeup whilst they're sneaking away from a difficult situation. And roguelikes typically don't really care what they look like. They more care about the functionality behind it, the cleverness behind it. Standing there as like a muscle-bound warrior in a really cool pose is not what rogues do. So let's look at the definition of rogue. A dishonest or unprincipled man, apparently. Now, first of all, I have to say that's just sexist, quite frankly. The synonyms given here are scoundrel, villain, reprobate, rascal, good-for-nothing, and wretch. I think this is a very biased definition, quite frankly. As a fan of rogues, I don't think this is really representative of who we really are. But it straight away shows that there's sort of a lack of certain restrictions upon a rogue. Rather than calling it dishonest and unprincipled, I would more call it unhindered and pragmatic. Further definition, one whose behavior one disapproves of, but who is nonetheless likable or attractive. Okay, I'll live with that definition. That's quite nice. And it's the old rogue kind of, a scamp, a rascal, an imp, a devil, a monkey. I don't really know why monkey's in there, but it's in the definition anyway. But there's this sense of a rogue maybe is someone slightly wrong or sort of does wrong things, and yet you still like them anyway. There's a certain charm there. Second definition, an elephant or other large wild animal living apart from the herd and having savage or destructive tendencies. That's perhaps not what we normally associate rogues with, but there's an important sub-meaning to this, which is detailed here. A person that behaves in an aberrant or unpredictable way. Someone who's kind of separate from the others and doesn't behave in the way that you would expect. A certain element of chaos and unpredictability to the rogue. That's a dictionary definition. Now let's have a look at the etymology, which isn't quite fitting on the screen. But so from the 1560s, I should say, it came from an idle vagrant. In particular, it's shortened from rogger, which was thieves' slang for someone who pretended to be a poor scholar from Oxford or Cambridge and went around begging. I love the image of that. Someone going around saying, "Oh, chap, I just need 6,000 guineas for my fees at Oxford. Could you ever just lend an old chap a hand, would you now?" That's a lovely thought of that's where rogues come from. And down here it's got a little bit of history of it. It started off with a sort of affectionate term, with a mischievous person. Later on, it came to be used as this sort of large wild beast living apart. Elephants in particular is where that came from, the idea of a rogue elephant that would be sort of a destructive force outside of the normal placid herd. And then something uncontrolled or disciplined in the 1960s. From the 17th century, there was the idea of a rogues gallery, so a collection of mugshots, i.e. criminals. So rogue has this long association with criminality. So we see a whole bunch of different layers to the meaning here, with rogue meaning something separate, something potentially criminal, something potentially dangerous. But let's go deeper. I think we can go deeper than just the defining words that are up here and look at rogues in culture. Now, the prototypical rogue from modern ideas is the grey mouser from Fritz Lieber's. There's these two adventures that were together. And the grey mouser was this 5-foot-tall man, and he had a whole range of kind of like cunning skills. He dabbled in magic, he dabbled in sword play and dagger play, and was known for sort of cunning plots and getting into difficult situations that he didn't particularly want to be in and having to get out of them. And this was the prototypical rogue that then went into the more Dungeons and Dragons style rogue. And Gary Gygax has said that his idea of a rogue that is defined as the rogue class in Dungeons and Dragons. There was a lot to Grey Mouser and similar fiction from around the time which depicted rogues as these sort of slightly dirty vagabonds that would dabble in lots of different things, would rely on cunning and sort of clever tricks rather than straight out strength to overcome obstacles. And the Dungeons and Dragon rogue is really the culturally atypical rogue that we now all think about in sort of fantasy setting rogues. There's a lot of interesting elements to looking at the statistics of a rogue in Dungeons and Dragons. Their primary statistics are dexterity and charisma. They're probably the only class that cares about charisma at all. They do not use swords, they tend to use daggers. They use bits of ranged weapon, poison, and other things like that. They can also involve a little bit of magic, but not a very strong magic. They're not really strong in one area. They have all these little tricks at their disposal, and that a clever character can use them all in interesting ways to do some interesting things. They also can steal. They're stealthy, a particular aspect of rogues in Dungeons and Dragons settings. And the big thing is the backstab is their special attack. So not the forward front, big armor. They have to get themselves into a special position where they can then do a special amount of damage. But it requires a specific clever setup to do that. And that sort of idea of a rogue is fed through to a lot of our fiction these days, and a lot of the rogues that we see in roguelikes and other fantasy RPGs now. We have other rogues in fiction. System Shock shows the idea of a rogue AI. Again, this is kind of a rebellious force breaking apart from the rules that we enforce, and acting aberrantly and acting differently, and being quite dangerous in that sense. And we have that idea of a rogue AI. We also have the idea of a rogue nation like North Korea. Now, I know Kim Jong-un doesn't seem like a prototypical rogue to all of us, but he is someone who's in a position technically weak on the world stage and yet still feared. Still, treated slightly like a joke, but also really there's a lot of concern about him. And the rogue is feared in that way. They're not directly considered a threat, and yet we still worry about them. Rogue from the X-Men started out as a villain and then later became one of the X-Men. It's interesting that she started out as a villain and then converted. Her special power is very different from other X-Men in that she absorbs the powers of other X-Men. It's a very sort of meta power like that. It makes her stand out from other mutants in the series. And in particular, she's not allowed to touch anyone. So there's this sense of her being separate from the others. And this is something we see from a lot of rogues, this idea of a separation from the herd, from the group. So her, even though she's in a group of sort of heroes, she has this separation. The Joker is a very, very well-known rogue. In the Batman series, you have all these different villains who have various powers to them, super, powerful mutant-y people, or people who have special drugs that they use, and like Scarecrow or Poison Ivy, or are very well known for being super powerful in combat. The Joker has none of that. He relies purely on tricks. And he's going up against the Batman, who is this physically imposing fellow who has lots of money and resources at his disposal. But the Joker subverts it all through clever tricks. And it's that idea of the subversion of expectations, of being able to get around the normal restrictions imposed by power structures. Sarah Palin, obviously in her book Going Rogue, talked about how she was, a real rogue. She was a disruptive force in her party, and they called her a rogue politician for going against the party line. And importantly, there's a sort of an American spirit thing to the idea of the rogue. Texas is known as the Lone Star State. It's sort of almost like a rogue state in its country, and there's a pride in sticking your thumb up to authorities. By the way, another nice thing about the Joker is that he manages to get a middle finger up in a daytime cartoon series, just subtly. Well, there is this idea of sticking the finger up to authority from a rogue. And then, of course, we have roguelikes themselves. And roguelikes were named rogue. They were not named, importantly, BAM-likes, or Beneath Apple Manor-likes. The first real roguelike, as we might call it, was Beneath Apple Manor, but that name wasn't all that sexy, quite frankly. Rogue, as a name, caught on a bit more easily. And roguelikes as a genre name have stuck around, even though things like Doom clones and other names like that have not stuck around. There have been other genre names that have been based on a single game that haven't really survived as a name, even though that name is the name of that original game is quite well known, like Doom. Roguelikes, even though most people haven't actually played rogues, that name has survived and has stuck around. And I think it's because there is something quite special to that name. Now, when Glenn Wickman, one of the co-creators of Rogue, was on Roguelike Radio and was asked, why did you call the genre Rogue? His response was, well, it was a short name, so it was easy to type in a Unix terminal. Which I think is a bit of a lame reason. I like to think maybe someone else on the team thought Rogue was thematically appropriate for the game, and I'll go into reasons why I think it is thematically appropriate. But that was his reasoning given. But importantly, it wasn't called Hero, okay, which is a shorter word. We have games called Hero Quest and the like. And I think there's a very important difference between the Rogue and the Hero. And there's these two well-known pictures of Rogue cover art, right? On the one hand, you've got this, I think this is the Commodore 64 cover, where you've got a man all muscly and he's just freshly oiled himself. And he's holding up the sword, and the woman's posing in the background. This isn't actually very roguelike at all. This isn't what a rogue does whatsoever, because there's going to be some monster sneaking up behind him whilst he's doing his big pose. This, just move around, this is more roguelike in its pose. You've got a man reaching up to grab a gem, whilst there are dark forces lurking in the background. And he's not facing up to the dark forces. He's grabbing the gem quickly whilst he can, and then he's going to make a run for it. Because that's what we do in roguelikes. I think it is very important to contrast the hero and the rogue. And I've got some points here. So heroes tend to have a noble cause. They're fighting for the common good, or they're fighting to save someone. The rogue, in a normal story, is for self-interest. For instance, a typical hero story might have the princess has been kidnapped, and the prince must ride out to rescue her. Okay? A typical rogue story will be the princess being kidnapped, and the king offers a reward for her return. And that's what interests the rogue. The hero tends to defend the establishment. He's defending the monarchy, or he's defending the state from some invader, whilst the rogue is rebelling against whatever authority feature is there. The hero will have a destiny, a divine quest, whereas often rogues accidentally end up in the epic tales that they're involved in. And in roguelikes themselves, you'll see that in the likes of Tales of Magial and Adom, you start off as someone who's not particularly interested in the big happenings of the world. You're just trying to get rich or trying to have an adventure, and you get wrapped up in these big events that are happening. The hero has a big sword, very phallic symbol, whereas the rogue has a small dagger. It's efficient, gets the job done. Yeah? The hero is brave, whilst the rogue is cautious. And you can see straight away how that plays into roguelike gameplay and how that's important. The hero intimidates people. He pulls out his sword and suddenly all the ruffians run away. The rogue is the one running away. He sees the dragon, he's like, screw this. I'm going to find some clever way around this. Bilbo is another example of a sort of rogue, and it was part of the influence for the rogue class in Dungeons & Dragons as well, because he was a sneaky character. The hero will fight in an honorable duel where they start off in an equals setting and they both fight and one of them dies and then there's an honorable, oh, I respect you for I've died too kind of thing. The rogue will sneak up and backstab the person before the duel ever happens. Okay? He doesn't want to fight on equal settings, he fights on the smart settings. The hero will win by the power of love. Everyone will group around him and there'll be this good feeling and, he'll be against impossible odds, but, through magic and wonder and his big sword, he will win. The rogue wins by craftiness, very different from this power of love. At the end of the quest, the hero will refuse the reward that's given to him by the poor people that wanted them to defend their village. The rogue will steal all their valuables as well as taking whatever rewards offered. In a typical rogue setting, the rogue is the one stealing items, and he will happily take those rewards. And typically, hero's story, end of the story, the hero slays the dragon, rescues the princess, and the princess automatically falls in love with him, and they ride off into the sunset together. And the hero's never expressed any interest in the woman before. All he's expressed interest in is posing with his big sword like this. He goes back to the woman, he doesn't even care. Typically in a rogue story, it starts off, the rogue is being chased out of the palace because he's just seduced the princess. He's not having to win her through brawn, he is actually seducing her through craftiness. And so these are heroes and rogues, and I think it's important to consider in the design of roguelikes how we design them to encourage roguishness and how we enforce roguishness in our games. And importantly, I think we see some really rogue-like aspects of roguelikes. You start off very weak. It's important. You're not made to feel like a hero straight away. You have very little at your disposal. There are a lot of unknowns. You don't know the environment. You don't know what's around the corner. The items that you find might be unidentified. Magic items that you find may be dangerous to use or maybe very useful to use. You don't know how enemies will behave. You don't know what enemies there will be. Pressure, in particular, there tends to be a hunger clock in roguelikes, something forcing you to go forward, something that doesn't let you just sit around feeling relaxed. And threat, permadeath in roguelikes, is the ultimate threat. You know that all your achievements made with this character will disappear if you make the wrong decisions. And these combine with this, opportunities for ingenuity. So typical roguelike will have many elements that you can bring together in interesting ways and use them to do something interesting and something that makes you feel clever when you do it. You have these threats and these pressures and these unknowns, and you need to combine what knowledge you have and work within the system to try and find clever ways out of whatever threat situations you're in. And these are important combinations of things we need to make a game sort of feel like a roguelike, I think. More important, I think, than the Berlin definition. Because without these, you don't actually have that spirit of feeling like a rogue in your game. But what more can we do? A theme, I think, is quite important. So not having a theme that you're the big, powerful, amazing hero of the world. Instead, the theme should be, that you have certain weaknesses or certain flaws. I've got an example here of a game I made called Toby the Trapper, where you are a gnome and you cannot attack the enemies at all. So straight away with the theme, you've got these ogres that are sort of chasing you down, and you can't even assault them directly. Thematically, that reinforces this idea that you are a weak being and you must behave in roguish ways. Reinforcing running away, I think, is a very important thing that roguelikes need to do, because a lot of players just don't naturally do that. They're so used to games where they act as heroes and where they face down any enemy, so that when they play roguelikes, they keep dying, and they keep doing, why did I die? And the question never comes to them, why did I fight that enemy? Why did I face up to that thing that was 10 levels above me? That question never happens. They think the game is unfair because that enemy was there. But games need to reinforce that you can run away, that you have tools to be able to run away with, and clearly sort of showing that. And that comes along with signaling threats. So it needs to be made clear to the player when they're in a threat situation. Otherwise, they won't know that they need to rethink their tactics. They won't know that they have to apply cleverness to the situation, that running away is potentially an option. Hard choices, I think, are an important part of the kind of roguish spirit. Positions where you need to choose between two or more things, and it's not clear what's the right thing to do. And maybe there is no right thing to do. This doesn't just have to come into mechanics. It could be, in the story of the game, there could be some moral ambiguity to what you're doing. There's lots of ways of reinforcing that idea of you're a rogue in a sort of imperfect world. And I think as well, making the player different from the enemy is one of the things that we've seen from the theme of rogues, is that they are separate from everyone else. They are their own individual character, whilst everyone else is society. They're sort of separate from the society. And I think this can be done in the game elements too, with the different creatures that you face. Having clear differences mechanically between how the player behaves and how all of the enemies behaves enforces this idea that you are rogue from them. And again, I'll go back to this example, Toby the Trapper. You play as a gnome character, you've got these ogres. The ogres can come up and kill you in one hit. But you move at twice their speed. And this is very important because it makes you feel, from a movement perspective, which is one of the things you do most in roguelikes and move around, this makes you feel from a movement perspective like you are different from them. It makes you feel smarter than them because you can run around them. If you're one-on-one against a single ogre, they can never catch up to you. You can keep running around them. And then you also have the ability to lay traps in the game, and this is how you actually damage them, by laying traps. So combined with the double movement and the other features of the game, you've got these situations where you're having to be clever with what you're doing. You can see that everything is a threat, and you can run away anytime you want because double speed helps you do that. And finally, back to Jupiter Hell. You may wonder, Jupiter Hell, I should say, the theme of the game is that you're a sort of badass space marine facing down the forces of hell. That doesn't seem very roguish from the sense of it. But there is, it's very inspired by Doom, because it's based on Doom the roguelike. And it's got this sense from Doom of kind of a marine that doesn't really care about the rules and is willing to do anything to survive. And if you look at the new Doom game that was made, one of the nice features in it is that it starts off the game, you wake up, and there's suddenly like a voice, like a talking head on a screen, trying to give you story exposition. And typically this happens in these sorts of games, that you're being told a story and you watch the cutscene and then you get to play. In the new Doom game, the player immediately rips himself off the table and throws a chair at the screen and ignores the story exposition. There's an immediate sense of he's going different from the normal path. And an important element in Jupiter Hell will be that the enemies will still make you feel like you are weak. So you are controlling like a single space marine, and there will be opportunities to feel powerful and feel sort of badass in that. But at the same time, some of the enemies are going to be really quite overwhelming. And thematically, we're going to load in sort of horror elements that make it clear that you are not necessarily in the position of power all the time, that you need to actually think to overcome these forces. And that is what rogues are. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for questions. Of course. So, anybody?
I've asked on Twitch if I don't have any yet. I've just asked on Twitch if anybody has any questions. We are watched on Twitch, so beware.
Okay.
What? No.
So, from the audience.